Hi, this is Alex Kantrowitz. I'm the host of Big Technology Podcast, a longtime reporter and an on-air contributor to CNBC. And if you're like me, you're trying to figure out how artificial intelligence is changing the business world and our lives. So each week on Big Technology, I bring on key actors from companies building AI tech and outsiders trying to influence it, asking where this is all going. They come from places like NVIDIA, Microsoft, Amazon, and plenty more. So if you want to be smart with your wallet, your career choices, in meetings with your colleagues, and at dinner parties, listen to Big Technology Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, Howard.
In case you need a lawyer, here's my business card. I'm attorney Howard Ankin.
Oh, hey, Howard.
If you or someone you know has been hurt at work, Ankin Law can get the medical bills paid, the lost wages reimbursed,
Oh, hey, Howard.
and the compensation you deserve.
Hey, Howard.
We're one of the largest filers throughout the state of Illinois of workers' compensation claims. We're here to help. Call 312-6-million. Injury law made personal, that's Ankin Law.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to another episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Tuesday night, March 24th, 2026, as we record this show. We still don't have a final Chicago White Sox 26-man roster. It would not surprise if we don't get that full list until later on Wednesday, or maybe the morning of opening day on Thursday. But in this episode, we will give our 2026 season predictions. What's the best case scenario for the Chicago White Sox? What's the worst case scenario? What's the most interesting thing about the White Sox this season? Who will be the White Sox Player of the Year? And our predicted win total for the 2026 Chicago White Sox. But before we get there, we have some unfortunate, dumb news to report, as Frank Thomas, the big hurt, greatest player to ever don a White Sox uniform, is now suing the team as it appears that frustrations continue to boil over from the snub of recognition during the Black History Month campaign from Chicago White Sox marketing. Joining me is Sox Machine's managing editor, Jim Margulis. And Jim, before I dive in on this topic, what do you make of Frank Thomas suing the White Sox?
It's sad. Yeah, that's the first word that comes to mind. Also, it seems like there must be something under the surface. Like none of these, well, I guess we don't know exactly about the City Connect uniforms, Thomas's exact licensing agreement. At one point, he was part of the MLB PA Alumni Association, to where they do, grant licensing to teams. And so, seems like he was part of that one point. Whether he still is, unclear. It doesn't seem like he would have a lawsuit if it was like a cut and dried. Yeah, he's, the White Sox are covered. Fanatics is covered. It seems like there has to be some kind of snag with agreements and such. But I mean, even going back to the Black History Month social media graphic the White Sox posted, kind of like a poor execution of an idea that was not malicious. It was, I think their hearts were in the right place, the people putting the graphic together, going for firsts, but then the format didn't quite allow it. And so there was some inconsistency with how it was presented, but Thomas was mentioned in it. So it's not like they completely snubbed him, but Thomas still reacted the way he reacted, and he has the right to feel the way he feels. And I'm sure there just has to be something underneath fueling it. He was part of the NBC Sports Chicago broadcasts at the end of that era, but then when they moved over to CHSN, he was not part of it. Is that part of the friction of not having a home on the broadcast? There could be a lot of little things, and obviously this goes back decades in terms of how Thomas feels he's treated. You can look at the Bulls to understand how Reinsdorf is stubborn enough to where he can't let things slide, or he won't let bygones be bygones, or be the bigger person when it comes to negotiations. Like he's loyal to people he's loyal to, but he also doesn't really give ground if he doesn't feel like he has to. So it's probably just two strong, stubborn, proud personalities who will never quite mesh as long as either is on Earth, and everybody on hand is just kind of like at the Thanksgiving table of just like, oh, this blew up again and nobody knows what to say. And you kind of mutter to each other on the ride home in terms of like, oh, I thought we were going to get through this okay. Yeah. And you just shake your head and say like, they'll probably go to the grave, not being able to bury this.
I don't know if you watched the TV show The Bear, but the analogy that you just used as far as that image reminds me in season 2 towards the finale. I think it's called Seven Fishes. For our podcast listeners, correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, the Christmas dinner, just absolute chaos before, spoiler alert, Jamie Lee Curtis's character drives a car through the front door. That's what it kind of feels like here with this lawsuit 2 days before opening day. Like, Jim, that's what we should be talking about. We should be talking about the start of a new season. We're excited to see what these young players can do. We're going to be able to watch Munetaka Murakami in a White Sox uniform. They have a tough test against the Milwaukee Brewers. But no, the greatest player, and for those that watch our videos, Frank Thomas is the reason why I'm a White Sox fan. And his autograph is behind my head in the back wall when we shoot videos. And it's just really sad that this is what it's come down to, where there's so much friction that they can't find a resolution on what should be, I don't know, maybe a simple misunderstanding. Like, if Fanatics has this broad license deal with the Players Association, maybe they think that also covers the retired players. Because back in 2022, podcast listeners, the alumni marketing team that handled licensing for retired players signed a deal with the Players Association. So whatever marketing deal the Players Association sells for active players can also be used for retired players. This is why you see retired players now in the show during the video game. It's those types of deals. And Fanatics and Nike, they still have their deal with Major League Baseball, Jim, until 2030. Fanatics signed a deal with the Chicago White Sox to run their store. So the team's store at Rate Field is part of the Fanatics experience. So Fanatics not only handles online sales for the White Sox, but also the brick and mortar sales too. And that's why Fanatics is being mentioned so often in this lawsuit between Thomas and the Chicago White Sox. But as one of our VC members, Steve, he brought this matter to our attention in the group chat, and he has 25 years of legal mediation experience. So who knows, Jim, Steve might be hired to mediate some type of settlement between the White Sox and Frank Thomas. But I enjoy what Steve wrote about this particular issue, and he wrote, quote, "I have no idea where the current lawsuit fits on the timeline, but I doubt the two events are completely unrelated. Either the White Sox decided to not honor Thomas because he was complaining about merchandise, or Thomas is still upset over the snub and is being true to his word by, quote, taking receipts." And I think it's the latter. I think the Big Hurt is so upset still about what happened that now it's gotten to the point he doesn't want anything to do with the White Sox, maybe. Like, if he wants to opt out, like, I don't want you to sell my jersey anymore. That's what this is. Like, if you're not going to pay me, don't sell my jersey. And man, that's a tricky situation between a professional team and one of their all-time greats.
Yeah, and you mentioned like the opening day and it overshadowing what the White Sox are trying to do this season. It doesn't quite do that for me, I guess. Like, I see it in as like Chris gets his efforts to compartmentalize Jerry Reinsdorf's shortcomings as a chairman. Like, you've seen him run the team in a different manner than Rick Hahn did in terms of like how he does not promise anything. He's very cautious with his rhetoric. He is very much focused on infrastructure because he knows he's not going to be able to spend 9 figures on a free agent. He's under no illusions about his spending power, about his ability to extend anybody. So he's very much taking like notes from all of the hyper transactional teams to try to figure out how to do it. And so like, I guess you could take your cues from him in terms of treating like all of the ancillary Reinsdorf, drama or, BS, whatever you want to call it. Just what, from his decades of ownership and just like the scar tissue that's built up from losing and fractured relationships and him being as stubborn as he is. If you could take your cues from Getz, you can just try to put that aside and just say, yeah, there's gonna be weird stuff that happens. Can't let it bother you. Just focus on, incremental improvements across the board and improvements in the processes and, Will Venable getting a better bullpen, all that kind of stuff that makes the day-to-day a lot more tolerable. Because really, I think everybody is just trying to build up a foundation for when 2029 arrives. And if Justin Ishbia, that window, if he's able to take over sooner rather than later in that window, then, it could be, all systems go at that point. And I think just you're biding your time and you're going to have to deal with the occasional flare up that comes with, his hallmarks as a chairman.
Don't worry, the White Sox still have Ron Kittle as a team ambassador.
Yeah, he'll always be there.
He'll
build that pedestrian bridge himself.
He sure would. Well, we'll know more about this lawsuit between the White Sox and Frank Thomas. The first court date of this lawsuit is scheduled for May 21st, 2026. And when there are things to report, we will do so. Right now, the Chicago White Sox maintain their position when it comes to active lawsuits that they do not comment on active litigation against the team. So don't expect to hear anything from the White Sox until this gets resolved. And we're still waiting for comment about Omar Vizquel and that lawsuit, so don't hold your breath to ever hear from the White Sox regarding this lawsuit between them and Frank Thomas.
Today's show is sponsored by Strawberry.me. Let me ask you something. Do you think championship athletes got to the top by guessing? No, they had coaching. Every elite athlete has a coach watching their form, calling the plays, and spotting the blind spots they can't see themselves. That's how championships are won. So why are you trying to win in your career without a coach? You're grinding, hoping for the promotion, trying to read the politics, guessing your next move. That's amateur hour. If you want to perform like a pro, you need coaching. Strawberry.me matches you with a professional career coach who breaks down your game film. They help you negotiate the raise, navigate workplace politics, and execute a strategy that actually works. Stop riding the bench in your own life. Go to strawberry.me/podcast50 to get 50% off your first coaching session. Strawberry.me, because pros don't guess, they get coached to win.
Shoot your shot on Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right, Prize Picks is now giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5. Prize Picks makes every dunk, every dime, and every board that much more exciting. So don't miss this chance to get started on America's #1 app for sports picks. I love that Prize Picks offers stacks, meaning you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. Do you want to pick more on Anthony Edwards' points, 3-pointers, and assists? Now you can pick all of them in the same lineup, only on Prize Picks. So go ahead and download the Prize Picks app today and use code BLUEWIRE to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code BLUEWIRE to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it is good to be right.
Kicking off our 2026 predictions for the Chicago White Sox is one of our special guests. You can listen to him in the Power Alley with Jim Duquette on MLB Network Radio on Channel 89 on Sirius XM. He calls college baseball games for the family of ESPN networks, and he had the radio call for the World Baseball Classic. It's one of our best friends of the show. It's Mike Ferrin. Hello, Mike.
Hello, Josh.
Ready for some...
Happy opening day.
Right? I was going to ask you, are you ready for some baseball? But
I've been doing games that count for 7 weeks. So, that's the beauty of college baseball is if you want games that count, it starts on Valentine's Day. So I'm ready for the big leaguers to join the party.
Yes. So let's start with, what is the most interesting thing to you about the 2026 Chicago White Sox?
Yeah, I think it's probably 3 guys that aren't on their roster right now, but will be at some point, probably as we get later into summer. And I think it's Hagen Smith, Noah Schultz, and Braden Montgomery. Because as much as I'm excited about some of the young players that have made their debut for the White Sox, this is the rest of that first wave of talent that's coming. So I want to see how that looks at the big league level. And I feel like they're a team that the second half, the talent depth is going to be deeper at the big leagues. In the big leagues, I think it's going to be a little bit different second half. I think the results will match more closely the feel of what last year's second half was. So to me, that is the most exciting thing, is when that group of players matriculates to the big leagues and we start to see them succeed and struggle. I think that's the next most exciting thing for this White Sox team.
So at the end of the season, whether that's a position player or a pitcher, who will be the Chicago White Sox best player after the 26th season?
Yeah, I think Colson Montgomery is probably going to be it. I think the defense will keep him at the top of the wins above replacement leaderboard for them, even if the offense sees some fits and starts. And I think you will see some just because he's such an aggressive hitter. But there's not a whole lot of guys that have that kind of power. I really like Montgomery. I think he's going to be an above-average player down the road. But I wouldn't expect like a 5 or 6 WAR season out of him. I think we're probably talking more in that 2.5 to 3 range.
Okay, so when you're looking at the American League Central, the Detroit Tigers are legit contenders to win the American League pennant this year, especially with the starting rotation that they have with Skubal and Valdez. Kansas City could be sneaky good if Bobby Witt Jr. gets a little bit more support in that lineup and they get a boost in pitching. But Cleveland, Minnesota, I'm not exactly sure on how I'm supposed to feel about these teams. So when you look at the current White Sox, Mike Ferrin, where do you project them to finish in the American League Central in 2026?
Yeah, I'm more bullish on Cleveland than a lot of the projection systems are, so I think there's 3 potential playoff teams in it. My bigger problem is trying to parse the Twins versus the White Sox, and the Twins ownership has said that they want to be competitive. I don't know how that late decision, essentially, ends up impacting them this year, and I think it's fraught with, on the White Sox side, trying to figure out exactly how these young players progress and, what the core of this group ends up looking like at the end of the year. So I'm going to still say 5th for the White Sox, but I don't think it's going to be if they finish 4th, it wouldn't surprise me in the end, but I think that we're still just a little bit away from them really turning the corner.
Okay, so then my final question to you. How many wins will the 2026 Chicago White Sox have?
73.
Okay. Avoid 90 losses.
Yep.
That's a big jump.
Big jump. Yeah, they made a big jump last year. And then I certainly think that with their young players getting a little bit more experienced, they're going from 102 to 89, and that's 13 more wins. That feels like trending in the right direction. I think the first half is going to be more uneven than the second, but I think that there should be a lot of optimism about this group going forward. And it does feel like the system, when they start getting ready for prime time, is going to be a little bit deeper in terms of the players that are coming through than the last rebuild. So I am very interested to see how this year goes for them. I think they are better. I just don't think that they're ready to be a competitive team in the division yet.
Well, again, you can listen to Mike Ferrin on Power Alley with Jim Duquette on MLB Network Radio, Channel 89 on Sirius XM, and over the weekends, he'll be calling college baseball again for the family of ESPN networks. And before you know it, Mike, it'll be Omaha time and the College World Series and the Super Regionals and Regionals. So, of course, we'll have you back on to help us preview the college baseball postseason and check in on how Rock Chalowski is faring. But, Mike, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Yeah, no problem. I'm surprised that you just haven't moved into Rock's house yet.
Again, huge thank you to Mike Ferrin for joining the podcast to give us his 2026 predictions, being our special guest. And now it's our turn, Jim Margulis, to give our predictions for the upcoming 2026 Chicago White Sox season. You, the podcast listener, whether you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Music or any of your podcast apps, or listening to us on youtube.com/SoxMachine, let us know in the comments section about your predictions. And let's start, Jim, with the best case scenario of the 2026 Chicago White Sox. When you dream big, orange pie in the sky, what's the best case scenario for the White Sox this season?
Well, it's funny. I was looking at last year's predictions just to kind of see where I was headspace wise and, where the White Sox finished on the spectrum. And my best case scenario for them was 63-99. And they almost accomplished that. I felt like also my worst case scenario is 30-132, just because I was very mad at them for losing 121 games and just making me look bad. And not that I had high hopes for them, but I was thinking they're going to win 55 games, and they just indulged every single worst case scenario, every most cynical take you could muster. And so I decided to go all in on that regard and say the best they can do is 63 wins, and they almost did it. But, seeing the way the season unfolded, and if they had a little bit more stability in the bullpen, they could have won 70. So I think it's time to raise the bar a little bit and start setting some expectations, even though Chris Getz doesn't want to. So I would say that by the end of the season, I don't think the best case scenario involves the postseason. Don't think they're quite there yet. Just too many holes. The lineup is shorthanded. Pitching is still developing. But let's say the rotation, the early plan A rotation holds up well enough. And then by the end of the year, there's a good blend of high-end prospects like Tanner McDougal, Hagen Smith, Noah Schultz, and then Shane Smith and Davis Martin and Sean Burke, or whoever is holding down the fort from the opening day roster. And then you have a Cleveland Guardians offense in which the infield coalesces into something and is able to overcome or just overshadow an outfield that doesn't do much, which we've seen Cleveland do. And then the bullpen is good. Not maybe great. It's not the best bullpen you've ever seen, but holds the leads it's supposed to hold more or less. And they're able to, do well in the comeback game as well. And I could see that all come together for 82 wins. Okay. It would take some surprising setbacks in the division. It would take the Twins being as bad as they could possibly be. The Guardians finally paying the price for not really adding over the course of a winter. The Tigers kind of playing it conservatively a little bit. You're relying on in-house talent versus really aggressively solving problems while Tarek Skubal's still there. But all that theoretically could happen. The White Sox could force problems for the other divisional opponents for once. And I think that would be how they get to a winning record.
All right. So for my best case scenario, I'm thinking big, Jim. I'm thinking a duplication of the 2023 Texas Rangers season. Yes, the White Sox do not have a $500 million middle infield at shortstop and second base. But I think the best case scenario for the White Sox is somehow they win 90 games, shock the world, storm through the postseason with all of these young players that are not busting. They are booming in a big way. Everything pans out, and the White Sox win the World Series in 2026. I think that is the best case scenario for the White Sox. So the very top. Worst case scenario, I'll start. Everyone's heads are falling off. Injuries compound. All of a sudden, Hagen Smith and Noah Schultz are not ready to join the majors. Colson Montgomery takes a step back in his development. Munetaka Murakami can't hit major league pitching. The White Sox only win 50 games in 2026. So there you go. That's my worst case. Bottom, 50 wins. Very top, 90 wins. What's your worst case scenario, Jim?
Yeah, along those same lines, like the rotation falls flat on its face early. A Shane Smith-led rotation just isn't what you want, it turns out. The infield, like you said, Montgomery and Murakami pay the price for their very extreme profiles and their swing and miss issues. The outfield is as advertised, and the bullpen's better, but the bullpen doesn't have any leads to protect, so it's just more or less for naught, and you're looking at who they're going to deal at the deadline. And then, fourth 100-loss season in a row. Maybe not 50, but I could say like 55 wins just because everything kind of falls flat. A targeted injury here, like the Kyle Teal, like his hamstring doesn't get better all the way. And you're looking at 2027 saying like, is there a core here? I think would be the worst case scenario. So yeah, that's, I don't have quite the spread you do in terms of like World Series winners or 50 wins, but it's close. I would say like that's like a 30 win spread nearly that I have in mind.
Yeah, that's a gap. I mean, it is a range, and it's not narrow. Like, I think there are reasons, and I can't wait to read what you guys, as far as the listeners and watchers, what you put in the comment section for your best case and worst case scenarios. But I think this season could be a wide range. The one thing I do not want to see, Jim, though, I don't want to see another 100-loss season. I mean, it cannot be a very long list of teams that have had 4 consecutive 100-loss seasons. And with the way the draft lottery works, you can't draft higher than 10th. So if you have another 100-loss season and you're a bottom 5 team, like, there's no benefit to the White Sox to be that bad. Like, there's no benefit to tanking this year because you can't do better than the 10th overall pick in the 2027 MLB draft. So if they want to win and they want to push more chips into the middle of the table, this is the year to do it. Like, go and win as many games as possible. I think that would be best for development. Losing another 100-loss season cannot be good for anyone involved with the White Sox.
Today's show is sponsored by Strawberry.me. Let me ask you something. Do you think championship athletes got to the top by guessing? No, they had coaching. Every elite athlete has a coach watching their form, calling the plays, and spotting the blind spots they can't see themselves. That's how championships are won. So why are you trying to win in your career without a coach? You're grinding, hoping for the promotion, trying to read the politics, guessing your next move. That's amateur hour. If you want to perform like a pro, you need coaching. Strawberry.me matches you with a professional career coach who breaks down your game film. They help you negotiate the raise, navigate workplace politics, and execute a strategy that actually works. Stop riding the bench in your own life. Go to strawberry.me/podcast50 to get 50% off your first coaching session. Strawberry.me, because pros don't guess, they get coached to win.
Shoot your shot on Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right, Prize Picks is now giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5. Prize Picks makes every dunk, every dime, and every board that much more exciting. So don't miss this chance to get started on America's #1 app for sports picks. I love that Prize Picks offers stacks, meaning you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. Do you want to pick more on Anthony Edwards' points, 3-pointers, and assists? Now you can pick all of them in the same lineup, only on Prize Picks. So go ahead and download the Prize Picks app today and use code BLUEWIRE to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code BLUEWIRE to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it is good to be right.
Now let's talk about the most interesting thing about the 2026 Chicago White Sox. So Jim, for you, we've been talking about this team. We've been previewing this team throughout this month and throughout the offseason. So much has happened leading up to opening day. What is the #1 most interesting thing to you regarding this 2026 White Sox team?
I think it has to be Munetaka Murakami in terms of him embodying just how it could go right and how it could go wrong. Like, if it goes wrong, he's not a major leaguer. The White Sox spend a lot of money and just have to eat the contract, and maybe they release him and he goes back to Japan and is a hero there. If it goes well, I would say even like well enough. Like I would say even if he's an average first baseman, like I'm really curious to see what kind of impact that has in terms of the awareness of the White Sox overseas, in terms of the media presence that's enhanced in Chicago, like what James experiences for what kind of following the White Sox have if he's just a good, solid, dependable major leaguer. If he somehow hits 40 plus homers, like so much the better. It's basically found money in that regard for what they signed him for. And then it's a conversation about, well, he's only around for 2 years. What do you do with that second year? Fascinating conversation. Like it's a real good debate in terms of if it goes well and he's well positioned to be a free agent and fare a lot better the second time around. Do you consider extending him, or does Reinsdorf or Ishbia? Like this is a case where like Ishbia, I'm curious to see when he starts making his presence felt, because like if somehow Murakami were somebody that were worth an extension, by the time Murakami's extension would take hold, and let's say it's like 5 years, like that gets in that Ishbia window of a possible transition. All of a sudden that's like his investment you're talking about. So that's one of those big money decisions. The stadium's another one where it doesn't seem like it's really Reinsdorf's, or shouldn't be Reinsdorf's call to make, because it really affects like the bottom line and the presence of the White Sox for the owner who's going to be around the 2030s versus the 2020s. So that's what I'm curious about if you get into like the high end of Murakami's production. I'm setting my expectations more for slightly below average first baseman, but has fun moments, and the whole cultural give and take is interesting and welcome for a team that hasn't had a Japanese major leaguer since Kosuke Fukudomi, and Murakami has a lot more staying power, hopefully.
I'm with you. Murakami's the most interesting thing about this White Sox team. If he starts red hot, Jim, like Jose Abreu did, first 40 games, he already has 10 home runs this year, and folks in Japan are watching White Sox baseball more, we have to contemplate at Sox Machine, how do we translate all of our written work to Japanese and making sure that translates well, because we have a lot more people, a lot more eyeballs in Japan tracking and how Murakami does in the Chicago White Sox. That could radically change as far as the near future of this team. And if he hits 40 or more home runs this year, the imagination kind of runs wild for White Sox fans, and it should for the White Sox front office going into 2027, because if Murakami hits 40 homers and Colson Montgomery in his torpedo bat is a legit 30-plus home run guy, knowing that Brandon Montgomery is coming, and maybe you could figure out what to do in the outfield, and Edgar Caro holds his own at the catching spot until Kyle Teal comes. Like, there's a lot of reasons to be excited about this White Sox team. That I'm with you. That second year becomes interesting for the White Sox, but maybe that second year is the trampoline for the Chicago White Sox to finally make the transition from bottom feeder to being a pesky contender. Like, people would around the league would say the White Sox would be a dark horse contender in the American League Central in 2027. If he can come out on the scene and be legit as a power hitter in the middle of this order for the Chicago White Sox, I think that could radically change the near future of this team. And we could start having conversations like the big league club, the big market big league club that they should have always operated as. So Jim and I agree on the most interesting thing about the 2026 White Sox. So we move over to who will be the player of the year for the Chicago White Sox in 2026. And Jim, I'm going to go with the chalk pick here. I'm going to go with Colson Montgomery, I believe. And I believe that if Montgomery can stay healthy and play more than 140 games, I think the defense is legit at shortstop for Montgomery. That raises his floor. Yes, he's not going to have a high batting average. And for all of our OG fans, I get it. You would want a shortstop that hits more for contact. But I'm looking at an 800 OPS, and I don't care how Montgomery gets there. I'm probably thinking it's more likely a 450 slugging percentage and 350 on base percentage. I'll take that. Or if it's a 320 on base percentage and he's slugging 480, I'll take that as well. The White Sox need as much offense as possible, and Montgomery can provide instant offense for the White Sox and provide some much-needed power that this team has been lacking for years. And I think he's going to come through. And my bold prediction for Montgomery is I think we're going to see a 5-WAR season from him at shortstop. And after the recent contract extension with Pete Crow Armstrong, maybe that's something that we'll have a conversation about this upcoming offseason is how can the White Sox lock down Colson Montgomery for the long term. So that's my pick to be player of the year for the White Sox, Colson Montgomery. I should say you can either pick a position player or pitcher to be player of the year, Jim. So you have the entire roster to pick from.
Yeah, I don't see a pitcher factoring in quite yet. Like that might be a conversation for next year, depending on how some prospects pan out. Going with Sam Antonacci. Just this going to be the year of deeks and hit by pitches and insane base running plays, and just he's the sensation that takes over the greatest 2-WAR player in White Sox history. Everybody falls in love. No, since he's not going to make the opening day roster in all likelihood, can't quite say that. Could be too long before he gets there. I agree with you in terms of like Montgomery, like best case scenario, or at least in the good place for the White Sox. Like he is the player of the year, and that would do so much for the White Sox if like that second half form gets better, just in terms of like less susceptible to swinging and missing in the zone. The defense holds up. The power is still there. He gets smarter. The plate discipline that he showed as a prospect returns. And like, yeah, he's all of a sudden Corey Seager slightly lighter. Maybe not as, because he doesn't quite have the base running component, but everything else is there. And yeah, you're looking at like a 5-1 player and potential all-star. And that's within his, reach. I just think there are enough pronounced flaws in his game to where there could be a big adjustment period. And he does have either, because the wear and tear that he's played through before poorly, kind of resurfaces. And so he's thrown off his game, or just the league adjusts to him and he still hasn't quite being able to master the fringes of the zone in a way that benefits him. And it's more kind of a frustrating existence for him. I think maybe the stabler bet, assuming he comes back from his hamstring strain, is Kyle Teal. I just liked the way he hit as a rookie. I like the power that he showed. I like that it was like a very efficient form of power to where like it went to the pull field. And as a lefty who can elevate to the pull field, like it's a great place to be, is guaranteed rate field, because that ball travels that way. And, the athleticism is there. The receiving is there so far. He could, I guess there's no reason why he can't get better defensively behind the plates. Like he's physically gifted enough to where, with more reps, more exposure to professional pitching and major league pitching in terms of blocking and just game calling, et cetera, that he should get better. So I think I would say if you're looking at it in terms of like 100 simulations, I would say Teal is the more likely best player that the White Sox have. I would say in the 30 simulations that Montgomery is, he is a star. Like he's a phenomenon that Teal can't quite match ceiling wise. So interesting discussion. I'll take Teal for that side of it.
You know what's fun about this conversation is that for podcast listeners, maybe you guys have just recently found us. We've been podcasting about the White Sox for 12 seasons. And we have been clamoring for the White Sox to add more left-handed power bats for 12 seasons. and here we are talking about Murakami.
Pretty much, yeah.
Left-handed. Montgomery, left-handed. Teal, left-handed. It's going to be funny for us to be like, where's the right-handed power, Jim? Especially when Brady Montgomery's a switch hitter. Caro's a switch hitter. Yeah. Is that Miguel Vargas? Can he be the right-handed power hitter? Or the right-handed power is coming from Austin Hayes? Because for so long it was, Luis Robert and Eloy Jimenez and Jose Abreu and Paul Konerko even before then. And Frank Thomas again coming full circle.
Tim Anderson.
Yeah,
right-handed.
Tim Anderson.
Their best offensive players are right-handed.
Yeah. And now the White Sox have some left-handed options. So I think that kind of fuels my excitement to see and how this upcoming season goes. It's funny when you've been podcasting as long as we have, clamoring for needing more left-handed bats. the White Sox finally have a core of their lineup, and it's mostly left-handed, which has me excited to see what this offense could do, especially what we saw in the second half of last year. So with that excitement and optimism leads to our final prediction. And you can hold our feet to the fire with this one, podcast listeners. White Sox win total. At the end of the season, Jim Margulis, how many wins will the Chicago White Sox have in 2026?
Last year, I said 48 and 114, just because I was tired of what I'd just seen the year before and wanted them to exceed my base level expectations, and they did. So I'm hoping that now, having gone from being too optimistic, even though I thought I was being pessimistic, to being too pessimistic for a team that was bad but better, hoping I've calibrated it this year. And it feels like there's just enough things can go wrong to where I can't get carried away. Just because if they happen to lose 100 games again, you can see how it happens. It won't be a complete shock. So I'm going to say 68 wins.
68.
Yeah. It feels like, they could easily surpass that, but it also feels like they could have just one terrible month that makes it impossible to do much better. So that's why I keep coming back to the number.
Okay. So I think the over-under for win total for the White Sox is right around there. So I won't bother asking you if you're going to be taking the over or under, because you're right at the line. I'm going to be more optimistic. This is the number that keeps swimming in my head. I think the White Sox make a big jump forward this season because, as Mike Ferrin mentioned, and I agree with him, that his most interesting thing for this upcoming season, Jim, is the fact that Hagen Smith, Noah Schultz, and Brady Montgomery could be joining this team. And that just like last year, the second half Chicago White Sox are going to be a lot more fun and a lot more interesting and better than they were in the first half. And I really do feel like the floor has been raised by the offseason moves by this front office, even from the second half of last year. So I'm going to go with 75 and 87. I'm with Mike. The White Sox not only avoid 100 losses, they avoid losing 90 games. And at 75 and 87, I feel like that's a good building block going to next season where we could realistically be talking about how can the White Sox get themselves to be a 500 team in 2027. Because if you can do that as far as projections in this division, knowing that Tarek Skubal will most likely be leaving the Detroit Tigers or really test free agency and get incredible offers, that this gets the White Sox closer to where Cleveland, Kansas City, and Detroit are.
I would like that because that means they actually win games in the Central. 75 wins means they don't go 1-12 against Kansas City. They actually win a game at Kauffman. They
win. That's a great goal. Win in Kauffman.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Things like that. The standards of a normal team, a normally below average team, which I think is what you have in mind. I have a few more pitfalls, I think, at least in my forecast, to where they just can't quite get over the hump. But yeah, I think 75 wins would be a reflection of the infrastructural improvements that Getz has touted. Being able to find guys who can help, being able to ease the transition from AAA to the majors for the prospects they do call up. And I guess we did see that to some extent last year. My concern is you're trying to extrapolate that second half record to the first half of this year when teams are planning for it, when they have a whole winter to understand what the White Sox are bringing. Yeah, I don't know if it's that easy to translate. We were great in the second half to now we're the only options for first half adequacy. And that's where it gets a little bit dicey for me to put all my eggs in that basket, even though the White Sox are. But yeah, I can see it 75 is, yeah. I last year or even before, I would say August, I could say 75 wins for this team.
Right.
Yeah. But based on the way they ended the year and just the way people are talking about them, in terms of just the things they're doing now that they weren't doing before, the buy-in that they've gotten from the people they've hired, the comments they've gotten from people who are noticing the people that they have hired. They're trying to put all the pieces in place under the hood to make this a feistier outfit and a more resourceful one. And I sure hope that's the case, because that would be refreshing to cover and for fans to read about.
So I have what the updated Vegas over-under is for White Sox win total, and it's 67.5 wins. So you're right on the money. You're right with Vegas. So Jim is taking the over. I'm taking the over. Please bet responsibly.
I do not. Yeah, that's perfect, because I don't bet. I would see that and just be like, I'll bet push. Yeah, they'll win half a game.
They'll tie, and it'll count. I did ask Mike this question. Where do the White Sox finish in the American League Central this year, Jim?
4th, I think. Yeah, just 68 wins for 75 could be a third place team. 68, just be the Twins, I think, who are behind them. And we've seen the Central surprise in either direction. Yeah, we've seen teams wildly overachieve. We've seen the bottom fall out. So that's what's great about the Central, is that the shape of it in terms of, aside from a couple of years ago, like one team is going to be decent, and then there's going to be like a lot of half serious teams, and or you're going to get like just a cluster of 85 win teams, but no elite ones. And a lot of crossroads, I think, within the division. Cleveland never comes across roads. Like, they just operate the same way every single year, and they haven't been burned for it. But like the Tigers, what do they do? The Royals, how much can they keep adding with the market they have and the stadium they're trying to angle for? The Twins, does one poll ad make a difference over another? It's fun. It's compelling, if not in like the NL West version of compelling, where great teams adding a lot, spending a lot of money, going for it. It's more like just the human drama, life's rich pageant type of drama that we're afforded in a very small market division.
Yeah, the Tigers over-unders 85.5 wins. I'm kind of leaning over for that. The Royals 82.5 wins. I'm kind of leaning over on that. The Guardians 79.5 wins. I feel like they always exceed expectations somehow, to your point. I feel over on that. Twins over-under 72.5 wins. I am feeling under. I'm not only feeling under on the Twins, Jim. I feel like the Minnesota Twins are going to have a dumpster fire of a season in which the bottom completely falls out, and they have the worst record in Major League Baseball. Like, that's my boldest prediction this year. Not the Rockies, not the White Sox, not the Angels, the Twins. I feel like a reckoning is coming to Minneapolis, and it's a lot of mess up there. Aaron Gleeman, Dan Hayes do a fantastic job covering that team, and every single time I read any of their articles regarding the Twins, I just don't know how anyone in Minneapolis could have some sort of confidence, Jim, or hope coming into the season. And we say this as those that cover the Chicago White Sox. Like, Twins fans, if you discover this clip or you're listening to this podcast, we know exactly how you feel. This is not too long ago from where the White Sox were operating, and I'm getting a lot of the same vibes from 2 years ago White Sox with this upcoming Twins team. So hopefully everything works out, but man, already dealing with some injuries, dealing with some uncertainty. It's going to be an interesting year in Minneapolis, and I don't have a lot of confidence in them. So I'm with you. That's why I have the White Sox finishing in 4th. Feeling like Detroit, Kansas City, and Cleveland, they're going to have better than expected seasons. It's going to be an interesting race in the Central. Hopefully the White Sox stay in it as long as possible. And that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. Again, let us know in the comments section what your 2026 season predictions are. A lot more news coming your way. Again, when we have the final rosters, we'll be reporting that on SoxMachine.com. James Fegan is returning from vacation. He'll be making his way up to Milwaukee. The Chicago White Sox have their first team workout in Milwaukee around 5 p.m. Central Time On Wednesday, it's starting to get real, folks. 1 p.m. Central Time will be the first pitch for the White Sox against the Milwaukee Brewers on opening day. We have a lot more coverage coming your way, even on the podcast and video front with the White Sox wake-up call. You will be prepared for the 2026 season for joining us at Sox Machine. If you just discovered the Sox Machine podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You can also check out our videos on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/SoxMachine. Follow us on social media. We're on all the platforms at Sox Machine. You can follow James at JR Fegan. He'll be reporting from the White Sox clubhouse in the opening series as he'll be making his way to Milwaukee. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. Thank you to our Sox Machine subscribers. Really helps with our coverage and being able to send James on the road up to Milwaukee to cover this opening series. If you're not a Sox Machine subscriber, you can sign up at SoxMachine.com/products. Monthly plans start at $5. We also have discounts on annual subscriptions. Again, we also have some spots open in our Veterans Committee. So if you'd like to be part of that group chat and have direct access and be able to ask questions to James, or even James texting the group right now what he is hearing as far as who will be making the 26-man roster as he tries to get confirmation from White Sox front office employees on those rumors. You can sign up at SoxMachine.com/products and inquire to join the Veterans Committee today. The Sox Machine podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com. You're for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margulis, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.
Hi, this is Alex Kantrowitz. I'm the host of Big Technology Podcast, a longtime reporter and an on-air contributor to CNBC. And if you're like me, you're trying to figure out how artificial intelligence is changing the business world and our lives. So each week on Big Technology, I bring on key actors from companies building AI tech and outsiders trying to influence it, asking where this is all going. They come from places like NVIDIA, Microsoft, Amazon, and plenty more. So if you want to be smart with your wallet, your career choices, in meetings with your colleagues, and at dinner parties, listen to Big Technology Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.